advisory services along the life cycle of healthcare product developments. My colleague Trish here today reminds me that I have to handle a few logistics points. So we'll ask you just to mute yourself, as well as reminding you that this meeting is recording. So by joining this meeting, you agree, you consent actually that this meeting is recorded. We prepared this event with Ximedica and Greenlight Guru. So I would like to give Rebecca Ford and Connerrimaili the opportunity to introduce both organizations before thanking them for joining us. I think we have a couple of people not on mute. We'll ask everybody to go on mute. Thank you. Rebecca, would you like to introduce Ximedica, if you're online?
Sure, perfect. Do you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. So, hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Ford, Director of Program Management at Ximedica in our Drug Delivery and Pharmaceutical Business Unit. As mentioned, I'm just going to quickly give an introduction of who Ximedica is. So Ximedica is a medical device consultancy. We span the diagnostics, MedTech, and drug delivery spaces. So we employ a human-centered design approach to medical device development process. We support our clients as early as ideation, concept generation, all the way through to commercial launch. So that means we integrate with our clients as early as concept generation through concept feasibility, device development, detailed engineering, design verification, design validation, and support their initial submissions and launch. We also do some small scale manufacturing, both for clinicals and or commercial product. And we also have an integrated human factors group. So we support early VOC research, formative evaluations, and summative testing. Ximedica is based in Providence, Rhode Island. Originally, that's our first office, but we've expanded into Minneapolis, Philadelphia, and Hong Kong as well. And our manufacturing is actually located in Providence, Rhode Island as well. So my role at Ximedica and Drug Delivery and Pharmaceutical Business Unit, I work closely with pharma companies looking to develop a delivery system for either their clinicals or commercial launches. And that comes with an understanding of the clinical needs of those pharma companies and how our device development process fits in with their clinical plans and their clinical needs. So with that being said, I'm looking forward to today's discussion on the regulatory trends and challenges we face in combination products. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for supporting this event and for the great expertise that you bring with Ximedica. I'd like to give Connor the opportunity to introduce Greenlight Guru.
Yeah, thank you, Ad. I appreciate that. Hey, everyone. This is Connerrimaili, Director of Global Partnerships here at Greenlight Guru. And first, I just want to give a huge thank you to our friends at Alira Health for preparing the event. You have an absolute star-studded regulatory staff of professionals ready to shower you with the best and brightest guidance in this interesting journey that is drug delivery and combo products. So very proud to be associated, and thanks for having us. Before talking about what we do, I'll start. Obviously, my role in partnerships is really to work with the industry and create partnerships that provide a one-stop shop. Obviously, Greenlight Guru provides an EQMS platform designed exclusively to IVD, medical device, drug delivery, and combo products. But aside from that, what we look to do is educate the industry with the fast pace of new innovation. We're seeing first-time innovators provide education, information, content, of course, why you're all here today and why we're proud to be a part of the event. It all starts with our mission, which is, I'm sure, is a lot like everyone on this call today, is to improve the quality of life. But I think we sit in an interesting vantage point that it is patient-centric, but we can also affect the lives of medical device professionals, like those on the webinar today, creating efficiencies, risk mitigation, making your life easier in producing those devices, and potentially getting to spend more time and less stress-free time at home with the family, which is important nowadays with COVID. Aside from what we produce from a product and industry standpoint. We're always looking for ways to impact through sponsoring events such as today, our Global Medical Device Podcast, to which you can see just the amount of listeners, but also the audience that we have in the industry, or through our award-winning EQMS. Now, if you want to bump to the next slide, that's perfect. I'll talk a little bit about just the product we provide to the industry. So speaking of award-winning QMS, this is the very much what we do and what we provide to the industry. A lot of folks are typically surprised when we actually say that we're a software company because of the content and the thought leadership that we provide in the industry. But with that, we've taken a very different approach to electronic quality management system software, and we're built out of the box and pre-validated, which allows you to actually implement rapidly and not have to worry about validation when it comes to auditing and inspections. We actually also showcase a differentiation in being intelligent. And folks usually ask, what does that mean? And it's really the approach of taking a proactive, letting your quality system work for you in a proactive fashion rather than being reactive. So we've actually begun to implement AI, machine learning, natural language processing to really help companies digitally transform the way they're managing their quality processes, producing safer products, reducing cost of poor quality downstream, and allowing you to work more efficiently. So let's get you off to the rest of the session. I know the regulatory team has provided a stellar session, and thanks again for having us.
Thank you so much, Rebecca and Connor. Thank you for supporting this event. So let's dive into our subject, right? Today, we're going to talk about the trends and challenges in US and Europe for combination products, particularly, obviously, with the view of their regulatory landscapes. Couple of words. So we are really in an environment where increasingly more complex solutions, including drugs, devices, and diagnostics, are being developed and tailored to specific patient populations. The regulatory landscapes in the US and Europe have evolved and certainly became more stringent. Everybody to go on mute. Thank you. And this was actually one of the key trends that we observed into our drug delivery system industry reports, which I co-authored and published in March, so last month. Regulators are looking for data specific to drug device combination product performance and not just the device performance. This means they are taking a more holistic view of the combination product than they did previously with standard 510K reviews in the US, for instance. New drug device or drug diagnostic combinations are certainly raising new hopes for patients, but their technical complexity and the addition of digital health have raised the bar for manufacturers along the regulatory and market access processes. So today we would like to discuss key trends, new FDA and EMA roadmaps, do's and don'ts in the US and EU to successfully register and bring new drug device diagnostic combination products to patients. Today, I have the pleasure to be joined in this all-woman panel by Alira Health's US VP of Regulatory Affairs, Olga Carroll, and Mary McNamara, our EU VP and Managers of Regulatory Affairs, Marriott Oresser and Ainoa Fortezza. A couple of words about the speakers of today. So Olga is a PhD. She's the VP of Regulatory Affairs at Alira Health in the US. Olga has more than 20 years of industry experience working with pharma, biotech, MedTech, focusing on global clinical regulatory strategy, competitive intelligence, medical strategy, HEOR, real-world evidence collection, and patient-focused drug development. Olga works on due diligences, risk mitigation, market access, and compliance. Olga also has some industry experience, working with large, medium, and small-sized companies on their developments and implementation of commercial processes. Mary McNamara is our VP of US MedTech regulatory, so here in Boston. Mary has over 25 years of regulatory experience in the medical device diagnostic and combination product industries. Mary has had her own consulting firm and served as the head of regulatory in several MedTech companies. She has successfully authored over 175 510Ks and multiple PMAs, de novo submission, request for classifications, and designation submission, as well as being responsible for several clinical trials. Mary-Aude Oresser is a PharmD. She's a VP of EU Regulatory at Alira, with more than 25 years of experience working in the pharma industry and biotech industry, focusing on drug development for early and late stage product, clinical regulatory strategies, global registrations, regulatory intelligence, label strategy, and health authorities interactions. Prior to joining Alira, Mary-Aude held several senior positions at Roche with 17 years, with growing responsibilities as EU strategist, global regulatory leader, EU liaison head, and project lead for Brexit for Watch Pharma. And then last but not least, Alira Fortezza joined Alira Health after 5 years of experience as a regulatory affairs consultant. And Alira was involved in providing strategic advice for the development of drug products for a wide range of indications. She also had expertise on EMA-related activities, such as scientific advice, protocol assistant, orphan drug designation, and briefing meetings. I was in charge of a team responsible for medical device and in vitro diagnostics, contributing to this product strategy to obtain CE marks, and as a human biologist background, as well as a master of pharmaceutical and biology industry. So that's our team today. Obviously, we'll be happy to take questions and to develop more on these bio, and I'll let the floor to the team, and we organize a session today with 4 views. We'll let Mary, Ainoa, Mary-Aude, and Olga speak about several aspects of the EU and US pathways, and then we'll be happy to take questions. So we'll start with Mary, and Mary will drive us through the regulatory pathway for combination products in the US.
Okay, thank you, Aude. Thanks very much, and I'm happy to be here to talk about combination products. Hopefully I can give you some tips, some potential regulatory pathways, and then some do's and don'ts for pursuing any type of combination product. But first, I'd like to just go through what is a combination product. So a combination product can be any of those configurations that you see on the slide. So it can be a drug device combination, biologic device combination, drug biologic combination, or a drug device biologic combination. But not only those are not the only types of combination products there are. There are regulated components that then are packaged together that enhance a certain function or carry out a certain function together. And those are considered combination products. As you can see on the slide, there's a couple of different combinations there, or titles for those types of products. So single entity, kits, and cross-labeled products. And one thing to remember is a lot of times these different combinations can be regulated products. So they may already be on the market, but again, they are combined to carry out one function. So those are the different configurations of combination products. Next slide, please. Okay, so the regulatory pathways for combination products in the United States through the FDA. Who does review a combination product? Well, that will depend on the primary mode of action of your combination product. What happens is we would submit something called a request for designation to the Office of Combination Products. Then they decide through a specific algorithm of what is the primary mode of action of your device, your product. So we propose a mode of action. If the mode of action is found to be a drug, it will be reviewed by CDER, the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. If it's a device primary mode of action, then CDRH, Devices and Radiological Health, will manage that review. So a couple of tips on submissions to Office of Combination Products. There are 2 ways you can go about submitting a request for designation to the FDA. A pre-RFD and an RFD. Both of these submissions contain the same information. So you're going to provide to FDA indications for use statement, device description, technological characteristics, and then the real focus, the critical area is the mode of action that you're proposing in your submission. So both of those submissions contain identical information. The differences in those submissions is one is a very informal process and one is a formal process. I can tell you we almost always exclusively use the pre-RFD process. We've never had FDA come back and decide that their information provided during the pre-RFD was not valid or they rescinded it. So the pre-RFD is something that you're going to submit just electronically to the Office of Combination Products. And then it's a very interactive process. So we have one pending right now. I think we've had 2 rounds of questions. So you get to see FDA's perspective on the questions that they're asking, and you can clarify information for them. Easier process and something I highly recommend. The request for designation, the formal process, is something like another similar submission, like a 513G or a 510K, where you're submitting one document to FDA. They have 60 days to review it. You may or may not get feedback electronically, but you only get one set of feedback. So it's not interactive. You don't have the opportunity to answer questions throughout the process, and it's more formal. And again, you're going to get a response at the end of that process. That response may be that they need more information, but you've waited 60 days for that information. The pre-RFD, those questions are interactive and sometimes come within just a few weeks of that submission. So those are the 2 submissions that we would submit to the Office of Combination Products. Next slide, please. Okay, so some pitfalls and mistakes in combination product submissions. You want to make sure as a company you're understanding your mechanism of action. You want to utilize experts on both sides of the fence. You want, if you have a drug or a biologic, you want to utilize experts on that side to come up with your mode of action. And then you want the same on the device side. Not having a well-defined pathway is why a request for designation is needed. So you want to make sure, again, that there are questions on the primary mode of action. You want to propose and get confirmation from FDA as to what the primary review group will be at FDA. It's of strategic importance, of course, because that's going to drive your pathway to marketing in terms of cost and time. Most companies prefer the device pathway. However, you can't just decide something is a device, right? It has to have that mode of action. But if it's really questionable, most companies will go with the device pathway because it's an easier pathway compared to the pharma process, which my colleagues will be talking about in a few minutes. So if your primary mode of action is as a device, it will be physical, mechanical, or structural. If it's a pharmaceutical mode of action, it'll be chemical or metabolical mode of action. So there I just have a couple of examples of different types of combination products. I've worked with several combination products, including digital therapies, the antibiotic bone cement, also antibiotic spacer for knee and hip replacement. And so how we proposed our submission was the primary mode of action was the device. So it was the bone cement, to cement bones, to cement components to bone. The antibiotic action was secondary to the bone cement and provided an antimicrobial effect. And same with a surgical mesh, same with the spacer that I just talked about. So these are examples of device primary mode of action that have some kind of a pharmaceutical component to it. Next slide, please. Okay, and then some other topics, and this is common in all products, I think, right now in devices. Anything that's novel, and really a combination product is just going to be novel by design, right? So, human factors and usability studies will probably be needed. What is the appropriate time to perform these types of studies? After you receive your designation from FDA as a device, you then want to submit a pre-submission to get some clarifications on human factors studies. And then again, positioning your product and further down the line in the process of the development plan. Again, most likely because it's a combination product and it's novel, it will need some kind of clinical work. You always, of course, want to establish a risk management profile, quality management implementation into your development program. And of course, there can be complex international registration pathways. And again, my colleague will speak to that in a moment. Next slide, please. So as far as FDA's perspective goes, there has been a significant increase in combination products. And I can tell you just from our experience at Alira Health, we have a lot of inquiries for a lot of combination products that are incorporating, antimicrobials into medical devices, but also digital therapies, right? So products that are integrated into a phone, devices that are attached to a phone and are providing some kind of guidance on management of pharmaceuticals. So there's a lot of these types of products being regulated by FDA and going to FDA through the RFD process. They are increasing in prevalence. And what are consumers looking for? They're looking for remote use, home use. They're looking at ease of use and implementation with those smart technologies. And of course, remote use and ease of use, that of course is managed and driven by usability in human factors studies. So for recommending, where to go, what to do if you have software in your combination product, look at the software as a medical device guidance document. They have a lot of good, solid information on scientific validity, what is FDA looking for in terms of performance and analytical validations. One other tip I'll mention is that, combination products and really any software, digital health, virtual reality, any of these products are regulated and driven by their risk level. And that risk level is outlined by this group called the International Medical Device Regulators Forum, the IMDRF. And that is cited in a lot of FDA's guidance documents. And again, that is based on the risk to the user, and also is the device or combination product, is it driven by and under the guidance of a healthcare practitioner, and that will again drive the regulation of your product, your combination product. So again, that's just some tips on digital therapies and what to do and where to go if you have a digital therapy that's part of a combination product. Next slide, please. And just a few more tips, again, utilizing those experts on both sides of the fence, drug and device, communicating early with the Office of Combination Products. You can always send an email to the OCP to ask some questions about your upcoming RFD. And they have streamlined their requirements and the information needed. So again, looking at those guidance documents are important. Human factors, and again, my recommendation is using that pre-RFD. It's informal, it's interactive, and you get FDA's perspective and their concerns on what your product's function is, what the product's primary mode of action is. And with the pre-RFD, you get the opportunity to address those questions within the 60-day time frame, not after, when you have to submit a new RFD. So those are my tips there. And next slide. And then lastly, just a bit of a case study. So this is just an example of an imaging system drug combination. So a contrast agent that would be used with an imaging system. We have a couple of different scenarios of how it would be regulated by FDA. It really depends on the indications for use. So, you know, the primary mode of action probably would be the imaging system, and the contrast agent just enhances the ability of the imaging system to, you know, look at, review, and produce very clear images. So this is, again, the regulatory pathway for a combination product. And again, are they going to work together? How are they packaged? How are they regulated? All of that is focused on the critical component of your primary mode of action. It could be an NDA if there is already an NDA in place for this contrast agent, and it could be a device application. Again, in my experience, what I would do is I would propose to FDA in my pre-RFD that the primary mode of action is as an imaging system, and the contrast agent is secondary in the mode of action, and that it just helps and enhances the images for the device function of an imaging system. And that is all I have. I'm happy to take questions at the end of this, this presentation. And happy if you reach out, our contact information is there. We're happy to help. Just to bounce questions off us at Alira, we're happy to address that, those questions. So thank you, and back to you, Aude.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you very much. Just regarding question logistics, so what we'll do is that we'll let you know your question. You can put them already in the chat, and then we'll be happy to take them at the end of the session. So thank you very much, Mary, for driving us through this overview of the regulatory pathway for combination product in the US. And then I would like to give the floor to Ainara right now to do, to give us the overview of regulatory pathways in Europe. So we'll move from Boston to Barcelona right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Aude, for the introduction. Can you hear me? Great, thank you. Well, I will try to provide a general overview on how are combination products regulated in Europe. First of all, a combination product in Europe can be defined as a medicinal product and a medical device that are placed on the market together. It is important to say that in Europe, a combination product is either regulated and marketed as a medicinal product or as a medical device. As you can see at the top of the slide, medicinal products are regulated in Europe by Directive 2001/83/C, and they are approved by the EMA or national competent authorities from European member states. On the other hand, medical devices from next month will be only regulated by the Medical Devices Regulation, which is a very complex legal text that I am sure you all have heard about. The EU legislation for medical devices was first introduced in the early 90s, and lately it did not gather the constantly evolving state of the art for medical devices or in vitro diagnostics. That's why the European Commission proposed a draft regulation in 2012, and after several years under discussion, in May 2017, they entered into force the MDR and the IVDR, in a transition period of coexistence with the directives, being the date of application for the MDR originally May 2020. It is true that last year in April, it was published a regulation amending the MDR and delaying its date of application by 1 year because of the COVID pandemic. So finally, the date of application for the MDR is May this year. In conclusion, with the introduction of this legislative text, the requirement to obtain the CE mark have been strengthened. And also, a new regulatory context for combination products is in place. We will see that later. As an additional comment, I just want to mention that the authorities responsible for issuing certificates of approval for medical devices in Europe are notified bodies, which are public or private organizations designated by national competent authorities, which review the medical device associated documentation, assess it, and eventually emit certificates allowing the products to be commercialized in the European market by obtaining the CE mark. So as a summary, we can say that in terms of combination products, Europe is a complex, quickly evolving and fragmented market, having the responsibilities shared between the EMA or national competent authorities and notified bodies. This fragmentation creates some heterogeneity, and that's why it is very difficult to even find an harmonized definition of a combination product in Europe. I would also like to mention that if we take the concept behind of a combination product, we can also say that there is a different way of combining a drug with another kind of device, which is in vitro diagnostics. And this kind of combination is what we call a companion diagnostic. It is true that it is, strictly speaking, not a combination product, but it's just another example of another way of combining two products from different origin. Next slide, please. Thank you. Well, having introduced the background a little bit, we can move forward with how are combination products regulated in Europe, with the exception of the UK. According to the European legislation, there are different types of combination product. As you can see in the top part of the slide, we can classify, there are medical devices incorporating a medicinal substance as an integral part. In this case, the product will be regulated either as a medicine or as a medical device, depending on the mode of action or intended purpose of such substance. Or there are devices intended to administer a medicinal product, which is the one at the low part of the slide, which will be regulated either as a medicine or as a medical device, depending on if they conform a single integral product or if they are sold separately. Next slide, please. Thank you. In the first scenario, if the medicinal substance is not exerting the primary mode of action, but it is helping on the medical device purpose, we consider this substance ancillary, and the whole combination is regulated as a medical device, not as a medicine, and it must be CE marked. In this case, the EMA or National Competent Authority will need to emit an opinion on the usefulness of the substance incorporated in the medical device. This opinion will impact on whether the notified body can certify the device or not. An example of a medical device with an ancillary substance could be a heparin-coated catheter or a silver-coated wound dressing, for example. If the action of the medicinal substance, which is the second case, if the action of the medicinal substance is principal, then we move to the scenario where the whole combination is regulated as a medicinal product, and we'll see it now. If you move to the next slide, please. Thank you. In this second scenario, if the medicinal product and the medical device form a single integral non-reusable product, just to remind that we are talking now about devices intended to administer a medicinal product, if this combination forms a single integral product exclusively for use in that combination, which is not reusable, then the whole combination is regulated as a medicinal product, being the EMA or the national competent authorities, the entities responsible for their approval. And here is where one of the major changes in comparison with the directives takes place. The MDR in Article 117 introduces one big change because it amends the directive on medicinal products, and it explains that for an integral combination product regulated as a medicinal product, for the medical device part, you need to add to the marketing authorization application dossier the declaration of conformity or the CE certificate. If the declaration of conformity or the CE certificate are not available, then an opinion from a notified body must be provided for the medical device part of the combination in order to ensure that that part complies with what are called the general safety and performance requirements, which are described in Annex 1 of the MDR. An example of a single integral non-reusable combination product could be prefilled syringes, prefilled pens, or, for example, nebulizers pre-charged with a specific medicinal product. Thus, with this new system, the medicinal, next slide, please. Thank you. With this new system, the medicinal product manufacturer, either a pharma or a biotech, as you can see in the slide, should interact with a notified body in order to provide evidence of compliance with such Annex 1 of the MDR, which are the general safety and performance requirements, and obtain a notified body opinion report. And this is something that was not happening under the MDD. Although the implementation of this new path can be seen as slower the process, it is indeed a way of thoroughly reviewing safety and efficacy of the combination. With this change, what we see is an harmonization effort being made at a European level in order to increase exchange of information and communication between both worlds, let's say, the pharma and the devices one. I just want to mention, and I think it is worth it, that this Article 117 is not applicable to already licensed products, unless there is, for example, a significant change in the medical device part that would trigger a notified body opinion. For Class 1 medical devices, which are non-sterile and non-measuring function, it is neither applicable. And just to mention that this is mandatory for submissions submitted starting May 2021. Next slide, please. Thank you. And just to finalize, in this second scenario for devices intended to administer a medicinal product, if the medical device and the medicinal product are either co-packed or cross-label, then each product follows their own regulatory path. So the medical device will need to be CE marked, and the medicinal product will need to be approved by the EMA or National Competent Authority. An example of this kind of combination would be a vial containing a drug solution co-packed, for example, with an empty syringe. That would be all for the regulatory context on the medical devices in Europe, and thank you for listening. I would be happy to take questions at the end.
Thank you so much, Ainhoa. So, well, I mean, you exposed very well how fragmented the system is and how complex it's becoming, how more complex it's becoming actually with MDR. So, I would like to ask Mario now really to drive us on the if and how the notified body and health authorities, in this new environment, how the notified body and health authorities would interact together, according to you, Mario.
Thank you, Aude. The interactions between notified bodies, and you heard as national private institutions, the national medicine agencies, or European medicine agencies, is quite complex. And before the MDA came in place, there was nearly no interaction. And now we have a regulatory framework with MDR to push for this interaction. This gap, by the way, in interaction was a real challenge for industry, because the industry are providing more and more innovative product with borderline definition to know whether it should be more a medicinal or a device system. And of course, there is more and more product as well that are developed together with a companion diagnostic. So having a better interaction was really needed. And beside this MDR regulation, what was interesting is to see that this challenge has been heard and recognized by the European agency. And EMA has published last year the document you can see on the slide, which is called EU Regulatory Strategic Roadmap for 2025. It's a reflection paper where EMA is collecting recommendation to improve the regulatory system, to make it more flexible, to support better innovation. By the way, this document was developed in collaboration with many stakeholders who could provide comments: industry, patients organization, academic, notified body, etc. So it's really a collaborative feedback. And if we could see on the next slide, one of the recommendations by EMA is to create this integrated evaluation pathway for the assessment of medical devices, in vitro diagnostics, and borderline products, because that's really missing. And they have 4 objectives for this recommendation: is to define how risk-benefit of this product is assessed and communicated, having more expertise in the interface between medicines and medical device, and particularly the borderline products, to better advise the company. The third one is really addressing this issue of regulatory pathway, we say, between notified bodies and medicine regulators. And the last one is to have a better insight of what is coming in the pipeline of industry, in particular on drug device combination product, using another project from EMA, which is called Horizon Scanning. So if we want to look about what is more specifically considered by EMA on the regulatory pathway, we can go on the next slide. EMA has developed 3 concrete actions to support this objective. The first one is to establish a process for multi-stakeholder scientific advice to support better the development of medicine device combination, but also the companion diagnostic. And that was really missing, to have all parties around the same table to provide advice for industry. Now, the second one is something that was completely missing as well, is to create a process to consult medical device authorities for the device part. And this through the life cycle of the product. And it was not possible before, and now we will have this opportunity. The last part is also to adapt the consultation process to address the challenging part of emerging digital technologies, because that we need to stay at the edge of innovation. So how this will be implemented, it's a learning process. We have not yet all the details. Discussions are coming, a lot of guidelines and more clarity on how the things will be defined will of course welcome. And in particular, one of the things is to understand better the procedure assessment, how the different bodies, notified bodies and European agencies are interacting, what is the scope, and where the assessment is coming during the procedure. All these guidelines would be welcome. It's still missing, but work is progress. And together, when you look at this, it's true that we are coming probably in Europe from a more challenging environment, but we are moving in a better direction, I think in the right direction, to support innovation and at the end to support patients' benefit. Thank you, Aude.
Thank you, Mario. Actually, that's the perfect transition to the topic that Olga wanted to discuss about today, which is really driving us through the key trends observed in the US, but also what would be the specific impact on the patients, since we are all here working for MedTech, pharma, and our goal is always to provide the best solutions to the patients. So Olga will drive us through her view on this point.
Thank you very much, Aude. I would like to talk and tackle a little bit today the combination products development strategy with focus on patient centricity and patient-focused drug development in therapeutic areas of high medical need. Historically, development of injectable combination products has been driven by therapeutic areas such as oncology, diabetes, growth hormones, vaccines, in which injector pen or prefilled syringe solutions have demonstrated their efficacy as well as good level of adherence amongst patients and health professionals in the hospital setting. However, in the last few years, and especially since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, the pharma industry has focused its R&D efforts on the new biological entities, therapeutic proteins, monoclonal antibodies, gene therapies, CAR therapies, to treat cancer or chronic inflammation, autoimmune, cardiovascular, neurological pathologies. administered by patients in their home setting. These products are no longer being marketed for intravenous administration in hospitals by health professionals, but for subcutaneous administration by the patient themselves in the peace and safety of their own homes. Combination products and drug delivery devices aid in patient compliance and a movement towards point of care at home. The challenge for the industry is patient-centric solutions that enhances the efficacy, safety, and tolerance of these treatments for a controlled and manageable overall treatment cost. Patient centricity analysis is essential for minimizing user errors, improving therapeutic safety, efficacy, and clinical outcomes, accelerating product development, reducing risk from production through commercialization. Patient centricity is another key consideration for developing delivery platforms designed for a variety of challenging formulations. Yet another challenge lies within the patients themselves. Factors such as anxiety, health literacy, and forgotten or complex healthcare provider instructions regarding self-administration create challenges for the industry post-development and during the launch of combination products. Studies suggest that around 45% of patients skip or avoid injections due to fear. Additionally, 61% of patients do not completely read the instructions for IFUs, with about 12% of patients not even understanding the IFUs. Other findings show that 40 to 80% of information provided by healthcare is almost immediately forgotten after the patient leaves the doctor's office. To overcome these challenges, device and commercial teams are collaborating early in the process, leveraging human factor findings for product refinement. Collaborating earlier also allows for the building and perfecting patient-centric training and educational programs to better prepare for launching in the competitive market. Next slide, please. Development and refinement of combination therapies provides patients suffering from chronic conditions improved treatments with the possibility of remission or even a cure. Evolving the launch strategy to include patient-centric training products and materials such as auto-injector and pre-filled syringe training devices, smart packaging, and training IFUs prepares patients to correctly self-administer a combination therapy and provide a higher probability of adherence and ultimate success of the treatment. Ultimately, developing a sound strategy earlier and addressing these challenges from onset of initial development to post-launch leads to an increased likelihood of product success, competitive differentiation, and improvement in patient outcomes. Technology, materials, and designs continue to evolve rapidly for drug delivery combination products, with focus on ease of use and reliability. Personalized medicines and targeted therapies include difficult to deliver and delicate biotech and biological drugs. New segments of drug reformulation technologies include nanotechnology, gel-based systems, and emulsion-based systems. Advanced excipients chemistries enable the development of novel products with unique features, especially for long-acting injectables and implantables. Electronics, connected devices are important drivers in the rapidly growing proof of concept and home healthcare market. Smart devices provide greater patient convenience, better compliance, and real-time transmission of data to their physicians. This trend was also gaining in popularity prior to the pandemic, but with the COVID onset, it has accelerated the demand. With the right drug delivery tools, patients can self-administer drugs safely and in the view of hospital or the clinical visit. We can go to next slide. The FDA issued a series of patient-focused drug development guidances for enhancing the incorporation of patients' voice in medical product development and regulatory decision-making, starting the 2017-18 and on timeframe. These four guidances addressed in a stepwise manner how stakeholders can collect and submit patient experience data and other relevant information from patients and caregivers for medical product development and regulatory decision-making. This series of guidance documents is intended to facilitate the development and use of systematic approaches to collect and use robust and meaningful patient and caregiver input that can better inform medical product development and regulatory decision-making. These guidances were a part of FDA's patient-focused drug development effort in accordance with the 21st Century Act. and the Food and Drug Administration's Reauthorization Act of 2017, Title I. The first guidance of 2018, called Collecting Comprehensive and Representative Input, discussed sampling methods and can be used when planning to collect patient input. It also provides a general overview of the relationship between potential research questions and methods when deciding from whom to get input, including defining the target population and development of the sampling strategy. The second guidance of 2019, Methods to Identify What is Important to Patients, discusses methods for eliciting information from individuals that is identified in the previous guidance of 2018, gathering information about what aspects of symptoms, impacts of their disease, and other issues are important to patients. This guidance discusses best practices in how to do qualitative research, including conducting interviews, development of interview guides, selection of types of survey questions, and considerations for collecting demographics and survey information. It also discusses survey methods and qualitative research topics to help avoid misleading results, such as inadequately priming patients in ways that can lead to results that poorly represent what is important to patients. Guidance number 3 of the 2018 Patient-Focused Drug Development Guidance, Methods to Identify What is Important to Patients and Select, Develop, and Modify Fit-for-Purpose Clinical Outcome Assessments, Selecting, Developing, or Modifying Fit-for-Purpose Clinical Outcomes, addresses refining the list of important impacts and concepts from the patients to develop potential study instruments. Given that not everything identified as important by patients, caregivers, and clinicians can demonstrate change in a specific treatment trial or in a measurable. How will you select what to measure in a medical product development program to show the clinical benefit? The fourth guidance, which incorporated clinical outcomes assessment into endpoints for regulatory decision-making of the 2019, addressed incorporating clinical outcomes into the endpoints, and addressed the methodologies, standards, and technologies that may be used for the collection, capture, storage, and analysis of clinical outcomes data. This guidance also addressed methods to better incorporate COAs into endpoints that are considered significantly robust for regulatory decision-making. Thank you very much. I will be more than happy to take the questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Olga. So I'll wrap up and then we'll go directly to questions because we have about, we have 6 minutes left. So we'll like to give the opportunity to the crowd here to ask their question. But I think that, the team really explained well how the regulatory landscape are so important for MedTech or pharma companies, combination digital health companies, diagnostic companies to understand well their regulatory pathways. To give you an example, I was on a panel with 3 VCs a few weeks ago, and we all identified that one of the, for combination product, one of the key constraints to raise fund or to move forward to market was the lack of understanding actually of how the product would be regulated. So we all hope that the team here today at Alira could provide you with some guidance on how to address these points, and also obviously to show that this will only increase through the need for more patient-centric solution, increasing compliance, increasing outcome as well as safety of the drug. And this is also a point that we address in the drug delivery system report that is available on our website. So I'll stop here. I hope this session was helpful, and we'll be happy to take questions. So to do so, you can either write in the chat or actually unmute yourself and directly ask your question. Otherwise, maybe if you have a slide with the contacts, I don't know if you had a slide at that, we can put it. But time for a question now, 5 minutes.
Oh, there are some questions in the chat.
Yeah.
There are some questions in the chat. Sorry, I haven't seen them.
Right, so I can tell you what they are. So
I see them, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So one is, does Alira recommend always submitting for a formal FDA designation as a combination product? So I actually recommend the pre-RFD, which is more of the informal process, because it's a much more interactive process and you can address FDA questions throughout their review of your submission. And then there's a second question there. Are there cases when cross-labeled products would not be considered a combination product? Yes, there are. You know, if you have two already approved, cleared products, so maybe a pharma and a device product, and they are only being packaged in a convenience kit, just for convenience of the user, but the intended use of those products are limited to what their clearance or approval is, then that would probably not be considered a combination product and it would need a combination submission.
Mm-hmm. I can also see that there is a question. If you have a combination of a new drug and a new drug delivery device, will it always trigger the drug regulatory path because safety and efficacy need to be demonstrated? In this case, I would say that if they conform a single integral product, yes, that would trigger the drug path, the medicinal product path. And in case they are either co-packed or cross-labeled, but to be used in combination, for a specific combination, then each product needs to follow their own path. I hope that clarifies the question. And sorry, just to see, does a GSPR report provided by the notified body is submitted to the EMA? Yes, the notified body opinion needs to be submitted to the EMA along with the marketing authorization application dossier.
Thank you very much, Shaino and Mary. We have a question here, which is, if companion diagnostics are not technically combination products, is there a different standard regulatory pathway for that?
Yeah, I assume this may be taken for Europe or either for US. For Europe, yes, there is a different regulatory pathway. We can cover that separately. If you are interested in knowing more on that, you can contact us and we can send you a brief details, because otherwise it will take just the 2 minutes that we have left.
I agree here. I can always provide US regulatory pharma view on the companion diagnostics and how they are looked at by the United States FDA.
Good. Sounds good. I think we have time for a last question or a last comment. Mary, did you want to add anything, or Mary-Aude?
Sure, I'll just jump in 1 second and just say again, like everybody has said, we're happy to help with any questions you might have, any submissions, work that you need. We have a lot of experience with FDA through requests for designations, 513Gs, combination product submissions, and those negotiations with FDA for clinical trials and the types of submission required. So happy to help. Just please, reach out to us. Thanks.
Yes, Aude, I also wanted to add there was an interesting workshop that was held in November 2020, focused on this Article 117 by EMA, with feedback on the learnings from the first products that went through the new MDR. And in a nutshell, there's a lot of things that it's the first example of dialogue existing, and the learnings, definitely there's still certain progress to be made on the assessment of the report and from the notified body opinion. There are a couple of clarity on the respective, again, on the scope and assessment from medicine and notified body assessment. But it's true already, you can have the slide on the EMA website, and we can share that with you if you are interested. But it's truly an example of how this progress in dialogue is going. So very interesting workshop, by the way.
Thank you, Mary-Aude. So I close the session. We are reaching the top of the hour. It's already late also in Europe, lunchtime in the US. So I would like to thank Mary, Mary-Aude, Olga, and Ainhoa for sharing their views on regulatory pathways for combination products, on key trends, as well as do's and don'ts and pitfalls for small as well as large companies. So We are always happy to take questions. This session is going to be available. The recording is going to be available. I think we will post it on LinkedIn, or we'll just share it with the participants. But thank you so much for attending. Thank you for the questions, and happy to continue the conversation. If you have any ideas on next webinars, we are also happy to take suggestions. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.